Good morning, Jem.
Morning, Nick. How are you?
Amazing.
Good, as always.
As always.
As always.
Always amazing. So, today,
Yes.
I would ask you if you want to do the intro, but I know you don't.
No?
Hang on, I'll get this right. I literally just asked him before we started. Clear Idea Finance.
Yes.
We
Got a
have
nod.
Richard Grainger.
Yay, welcome.
Hello, morning. Thank you for having me.
Morning,
Welcome.
Richard. Okay, so I know you're a little bit nervous about being on here. I can tell by your body language, but this is okay. We'll ease you into it too without too
But
much.
he has listened to some of them,
He has listened to some.
which is a
I
plus
have.
already, yeah.
And he knows a load of people we've had on as
Yeah.
well, which is also good. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Are you local boy, born and bred?
I'm actually from Colchester. I'm an Essex boy.
Essex
Okay.
boy.
Yeah, so I grew up in Colchester.
Okay. Is this like all the way through school as well?
All the way through primary school. And then my brother, who's 3 years older than me, he passed the 11 plus. So he went to Colchester Grammar. I didn't pass the 11 plus, so I didn't go to Colchester
Oh.
Grammar. But my mum and my dad wanted me to have something similar. So I ended up at Ipswich School.
Okay.
Oh.
Still a very good school.
An excellent school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why we're in Ipswich now, because my two boys are both there as well.
Just so you know, Jem, that this place is so posh, you can take Russian as a language. Yeah.
It's not like the high school I went to.
No. The one where you could just about speak English at your school.
Shut up.
If it helps, we'll just put this into context. Jem went to Stoke.
Okay.
That's
Actually,
it.
I knew that because I've listened to one of the episodes where that was discussed.
I thought you said, yeah, I knew that. I've just met her and I know it already.
Yeah. That's all right. Scott just called you a Suffolk girl. So, yeah, we've got the full thing. Okay, so how was school? Like, good, easy? You excelled? I mean, you went to Ipswich School, so obviously academics was probably strong.
I wasn't super academic. I was sporty. I did a lot of music there.
Can we rib you? Did you crew?
Did I what?
Crew? Is this what they do, like rowing?
No,
and
we didn't do rowing.
posh sailing and
No,
stuff?
there's no rowing. I actually did. I did at university, but not at Ipswich. I did
Okay.
rugby, cricket, a little bit of hockey.
Did you call it ruggers at school?
No, we didn't.
Ruggers?
No, we didn't. We didn't. I didn't really love rugby, if I'm honest, at school, but we played a lot of it. I actually did a lot of rugby later on, which we might talk about a bit later. And I wasn't super academic. I mean, I held my own. And this is one of the reasons why I felt so strongly. We'll talk about the journey between school and coming back to Ipswich with a long time overseas in the middle. But one of my main reasons for coming back, one of our reasons as a family for coming back, was to get our boys, who were 6 and not yet born at the time, they're 12 and 6 now, into the British school system. And because I'd been away from the UK for, as it turned out, the best part of 20 years, I was completely out of touch, didn't really know the schools. My mum still lives in Ipswich. My grandmother had always lived here. So even when I was at school, there were strong links with Ipswich. And in fact, to this day, I'm living in my late grandmother's house.
Okay.
Oh, I love
So
that.
So the house we're living in now, I used to stay in when we were really young kids, which is really nice. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed school. It was quite a pressure cooker. It was all boys back then, not anymore. So, when it came to exams and things like that, university, it was only really sort of when I was about 15, 16, and you're starting to think about careers and what are you going to do with yourself? And I thought about the RAF and flying, but my eyes were terrible, so that was off the cards. And then at one point, I wanted to become a vet, but I wasn't brilliant at sciences, and so that was really out the window as well. So this is the 80s, right? Yuppie era.
Yeah.
And so what was the obvious career that everyone was looking at? It was finance. Banking and finance and management consulting. So
So was your move like? So did you? I mean, you touched on it. You went to uni.
I did. Yeah. So eventually, some of my friends, I was in a group of friends who were the top academic kids in the school, and they all had Oxford and Cambridge sort of in their sights. I didn't. I genuinely didn't. But I happened to sort of go to a couple of the meetings that were being organized to try and help people navigate the applications. And I ended up applying to Cambridge. amazingly got in, which I was really genuinely surprised.
Do you know, you've played that down so well.
Well,
Normally it's what went to Cambridge, but it's like, yeah, okay, fine.
Just slid that in there.
well,
I was just expecting to hear the rejection story, but yeah, okay.
it was as big a shock to me as I think it was to the school. And I still had to get the grades, but, the school being what it was, they did a really good job of
They're very driven.
well.
I mean, we had a weird thing. This is why I know about the Russian bit. I've got a friend of mine who went to Ipswich School, and we had one of those funny moments of going along and calling out his old reports cards from school. And you could see that, he's quite a bright guy. But when you saw the teacher's reports, it's like, must try harder, must do better, must do this. And he was so driven and pushed all the way through, except obviously his Russian wasn't great. So I think they were encouraging him to drop that to focus on, slightly more core subjects.
I definitely had some of those average reports. I mean,
but he looked at me blankly, like when I said, hang on a second, you're doing 11, 12. Yeah, that's just what we do. It's no, normal schools do 9, Stoke does 2.
So I knew you were going to say that.
And I've always felt, I know that the whole subject of private schools, independent schools, it's very controversial. And should you, shouldn't you? Should you just let kids find their own path and not drive them and push them? I know what it did for me. I was one of those kids who had to be pushed. I wasn't a completely self-starting, self-motivated, driven person. My daughter, I've got 2 sets of kids. The older kids are in their 20s, mid-20s. Emma, my eldest, she's absolutely academically driven, excelled, also went to Cambridge, now city lawyer. I wasn't that. I had to, looking back on it, I now see it very clearly. I had to be pushed and driven and sort of forced to do a lot more than I probably would have done naturally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that. And that's what got me to Cambridge. That's what then opens the doors. And I firmly believe that now, with my 2 younger kids who are now 12 and 6, I've got one in year 7, one in year 1, to give them those same opportunities. And they might not thrive. In fact, our eldest son, who's 12, we did have a major question over whether Ipswich School was the right school for him. He's very musical, and that's actually one of the main reasons we kept him there, because they really encouraged that. But he's not so academic. He's got a few challenges. So
yeah, but again, I mean, I'm sure that even if he's artistic and that's his focus, if he comes out of Ipswich School, and I mean, let's face it, let's say he comes out of the equivalent of 9 Cs, right? I don't know what the numbers are now. They have their weird numbering system.
It's all over the place.
But yeah, so let's say he comes out with 9 Cs, but he's been driven to achieve that. It's going to be quite clear to say, look, his future is not designed to be academic, but his future could be artistic. His future could be entrepreneurial. I mean,
Right.
we've sat here now, we've done 30, 35, whatever podcasts with so many people that have gone, school was rubbish, school was awful, hated school, whatever. And a lot of the time you find that the academic genetics aren't always aligned with entrepreneurial or artistic or creative or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but at least you'll know.
That's exactly right. And with Oliver, our 12-year-old, it's still too early to really know which path he might take.
But opening up doors, whether he walks through them or not,
absolutely.
he's got the choice.
Absolutely right. And that's what it's about. And that's why we made a huge decision to move back, relocate the family back from Asia just before COVID, as it turned out, precisely to get him into that system so that at a young enough age, we could give him the same opportunity that I had and the same opportunity that my older kids had. So that's what we did. And also my wife was heavily pregnant with our second son, who's now in year 1. He was born right before COVID. So I did enjoy school, but I look back on it, and I'm a huge fan of the school. And Nick Gregory, the head, actually was at school with me. He was 2 years above me, so I know him quite well, which is strange, but nice, because he's very passionate about the school too. I just want to give my kids the best opportunity. I mean, that's all it is. If I've learned one thing over my sort of many years of business and life and all the rest of it, it's, you've got to have the opportunities. And a lot of the kids in Asia, and my wife's from the Philippines, and we lived there for a few years, simply don't have those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're going back to Cambridge.
Okay.
So what did you go and study at Cambridge?
Economics.
Okay.
I mentioned my brother. So he was 3 years older than me. He was super brainy, obviously Colchester Grammar, maths, further maths, statistics, and one other physics, I think. He got sponsored by one of the banks. I can't remember if it was NatWest or Barclays, to do a banking and finance degree, which meant he got paid to be at university. He got his degree, and then he went to work for the bank, and then he ended up doing consulting and something else. And I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to do banking. That's where the money is. I mean, it was so shallow, but that's, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. I was doing paper rounds in Colchester around the Army Estates, as a 13-year-old. I mean, you imagine doing that today. And part-time jobs at Sainsbury's and things, during my teenage years. And I just always had this entrepreneurial drive. I mean, I don't know what it was, maybe just lust for money. I don't know what it was, but it was something that just made me think, okay, flying's out, vet's out, what about finance? And I was pretty good at maths. And it was, again, I laugh about it now, but I chose my A-levels very specifically to align it to a banking career. So I did maths, economics, and French, thinking, because French was my best subject at school, I'll go and work for a Swiss bank because they speak French.
And they're Swiss bankers, which means they're not poor.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I did. And my first job, I mean, I applied, I did what everyone did, which was, pre-internet, early 90s, blasted my CV and application forms to everybody that was recruiting in banking and consulting and accounting and everybody else. And I got two job, I got 2 job offers and accepted the second one, which was from Credit Suisse First Boston, as it was then called, a Swiss-American bank. And, I just always thought, right, my troubles will be over, or I've made it, I've got the job, everything's paid off, the A-levels worked, they've got the degree, and now I can go and live my life and make money and retire at 45. That was my
plan.
That was my plan.
Yeah.
Oh, how wrong I was. But I feel slightly embarrassed talking about it like that. But in my mind, as a 15, 16-year-old growing up, through the 80s in a kind of a yuppie, commercialist driven.
But it was the time of Wall Street, and it was the time of you get a career. You get a career in banking, 8 years later, it's, retirement, that grand old age of 30 or whatever it's going to be, and it's like
absolutely,
that
was exactly what my plan was, and I won't shy away from saying it. That was my plan.
Okay, so for fully kicking over the rock, how badly did that plan go?
Well,
so we've got the job at Credit Suisse now, right?
Yes.
And was that like London or was that overseas?
That was London. It was Canary Wharf in the days before anybody really was in Canary Wharf. So I can remember.
I'm guessing were they building a lot of the time in the city and stuff?
Yeah, I mean the tower was built. Some of the buildings. I mean, I went there actually for a Christmas lunch recently, and I was amazed at how it's changed. Just the number of buildings, the apartment blocks, the huge underground shopping malls. I mean, I'm talking about 94. I started there, 94 to 2003. I worked in Canary Wharf. And, there was hardly anyone in the tower. And I can remember thinking, and I say this to my kids now, particularly Emma. So she, as I say, she's working in a law firm in the city. So she's fairly recently in the last few years gone through the same thing, right, of applying for jobs and trying to figure out which firms to apply for and how to prepare for interviews and all this stuff. And I remember, because I'm reliving it, right? I remember it. It was a long time ago, but it's still fairly fresh, that you don't really know what any of these firms are like. You don't really know what any of these jobs are actually like when you have to do it from, in my case, when I started at Credit Suisse, we were working in one of the groups from sort of 9 a.m. through to 11 p.m. or midnight most nights. And that was in Canary Wharf. And I was living in Maida Vale, right across, the other side of London, northwest London.
Yeah.
And the deal was, I mean, this is how brutal it was, that if you worked past 7 o'clock in the evening, you got a free dinner allowance. And of course, when you're junior, you have no choice. It's just, if you don't do it, you're out. I mean, it is brutal. And if you worked, I think it was if you worked past 10 o'clock, you would get a free taxi home. So, of course, there's no incentive to leave at sort of 9:30 or whatever. So, and I realized, I'd actually got engaged in that first year. My then fiance was still at university. We'd met at university. She was a year or two below me. So I'd graduated. I went to New York to do a training program over the summer, which was amazing because I can remember we all had to meet in the Canary Wharf office and we all got paid 2 months' salary in travelers' checks. Remember travelers' checks?
Gosh,
I know.
yeah.
So, and I got these 2 big books of these travelers' checks, and it was a few £1,000s worth. And I never had that kind of money. I mean, it was just mind blowing to me at the time. And we were about to fly business class to New York, which I'd never done. All expenses paid, hotel for 2 months with a quite intensive training course from all the graduates from all over the world, from the various offices. There are about 200 of us and maybe 20 from London. And so did that for 2 months. So lived this brilliant life for 2 months in the summer of 94, just after I graduated, and then came back in the September and sort of started working properly. And I realized very quickly that this wasn't quite what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Partly because of these brutal hours and these late nights. And I looked around me. I can remember sitting there these long, dark evenings in Canary Wharf, which was pretty desolate as a place at the time. And there were a lot of people around me in the office who were Europeans. They weren't English. They were, whatever European nationalities. A lot of them were quite a bit older than me, like a few years older. They might have been married with kids. And I could just tell that they were so driven. This was the absolute focus of their lives. They thought nothing of staying night after night after night till midnight. And I realized after a few months, this is going to be tough.
That's just no life, is it?
It wasn't.
No.
It wasn't. And so I changed.
That's why there's so much burnout.
Yeah.
It really was. And that was in the mergers and acquisitions department, which was sort of the pinnacle of the Wall Street.
It's sad because when you're that age and you're in London, you think, yeah, I'm working in London, all the excitement.
I know.
But you don't really get to enjoy the London aspect, do you?
Well, look, I think it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I think, I look at Emma, my daughter, and, she's working from home 1, maybe 2 days a week. She'll probably kill me if I get that wrong. But
yeah.
And I often say, and she's got screens set up at home, which of course we could never do because the technology wasn't there. We did actually a bit later on, but to start with, there was no ability to work from home. And I sort of say to her, you don't know how lucky you are. And weekends. I mean, I can remember literally cancelling family holidays a few years later with 2 very young kids, including Emma, having to cancel it the day before because of a deal that was going on. And my boss just said, you cannot go. And, I look back on that and I think that's horrendous and brutal. And by that point, I think I'd sort of adjusted to it and I realized I wasn't going to be defined by my job. This wasn't what my life was going to be, but I saw it as a means to an end. And I was able, I think I was kind of savvy enough to sort of work the system. I knew how to just make the most of it, do the job well enough, not rate too much with other people because a lot of it is about personalities. In that sort of environment, you've got a lot of egos, a lot of big personalities, and it's not an easy place to survive. And I think I did enough, and I sort of latched on to various people that were senior to me or my direct boss. And sort of become indispensable to them. And that's what I always tell younger people.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, if you can make yourself indispensable to the person who's responsible for keeping you there or promoting you or paying you, then that's half the battle. And if they're not an asshole, then so much the better.
Yeah.
It's always that funny thing. Like the lesson that everyone always says to you is to say, oh, no one's indispensable. And I always think, yeah, you can be.
Yeah.
You absolutely can be. You can put yourself in the position in a company where, never say never, but if they need to make redundancies, you're going to be the last name on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did work eventually. I lasted for 3 years at Credit Suisse. And then as it turned out, a lot of people moved from Credit Suisse over to Barclays, what was BZW, back in the late 90s. And that started with very senior people, Bob Diamond, who later became the chief executive of Barclays Bank.
Mm-hmm.
But he went over, took a load of people, they took a load of people, and they brought some junior people. And I was one of those junior people that went over in 97 to Barclays, which was literally 3 buildings along in Canary Wharf. So I never did get out of Canary Wharf until a few years after that. And that's where my Barclays journey began. And I ended up spending 6 years with Barclays in London in the bond market. So, very niche area of the global capital market. So it's big companies, governments, big banks. Our team was financial institutions raising huge amounts of money, hundreds of millions or even billions of pounds, dollars, yen, whatever it was in the international capital markets. And that's what I was doing. And I worked in London with a very, very talented guy who'd been brought over from Deutsche Bank, I think. And that was a double-edged sword, because it was a very difficult, be careful what I say here, but it was a very difficult working relationship. But he was immensely talented, and I learned so much just from sitting next to him for those years, 6 years as it turned out. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to go to Hong Kong, which is what I subsequently did.
So how crazy was it there?
It wasn't as bad as other places, I think.
Is it as bad as people portray? With, people on countless drugs to keep themselves going and all that kind of stuff going on.
Where do you mean, banking generally?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I certainly not.
Because I know, certainly stock market versions of, because my brother-in-law worked in Canary Wharf, and it's all the traders and everything else like that. It was
I'm sure it was
a bit degeneracy.
I'm sure
it was. You're part of bankers.
Wolf of Wall Street.
I can't believe you're bringing that up.
I would say it was more. I saw more of that in Hong Kong than I did in London.
Okay.
I think in London I was a bit more junior. I wasn't a trader, although I worked on the trading floor and I interacted with a lot of the traders. And that stereotype, I'm sure, was there. I don't think Barclays, bearing in mind, of course, Barclays was a fairly, a blue chip British bank. BZW, this sort of dusty old stockbroker firm, and everything kind of got rebranded into Barclays Capital, which is shortly after I joined. And it became quite Americanized. There was a lot of American senior management. So that created a bit of a culture shock, I think, with some of the sort of Carnaby Street suited, German Street suited, traditional English bankers, and then all these brash Americans coming in, shaking things up. There was a rumor, I don't know how true this is, but there was a rumor that one of the senior American MDs went around the trading floor fairly early on and said, "Where's a good place to have lunch?" And somebody told them the name, and he said, "Do they have a good wine menu?" And he said, "Yes, they've got a brilliant wine menu." And a month later, he wasn't there at the firm anymore because they were trying to make the statement that things have changed. You no longer go on boozy lunches.
Yeah.
So that that shift in culture was very.
We're on
evident.
first name terms with the sommelier, right?
Exactly. And that was, it was kind of a shame. And it was very obvious, even to me, fairly junior at the time, that there was a big change going on. And Barclays sort of elevated itself from, the championship to the Premier League over the course of sort of, 5 to 10 years. And eventually, as I became a bit more experienced and I hit 30 and, and frankly, I'd had enough of my situation there, I started thinking, okay, well, what's next? And I actually do firmly believe this, that certainly for me, the way that my career and my life has gone, sort of 5 years is a good go at doing something, and it has to be something really special to last and to sustain your energy and your enthusiasm for much longer than that.
Yeah. I think after 5 years you realise, right?
Right, yeah.
You've given it enough of a go, but you haven't quit too early.
Yeah.
And so just coincidentally, really, some of the projects that we were working on had applications around the world, and we had been quite successful in growing the business in our very narrow field, but we'd done a lot of business. We'd made a few waves in the market, primarily my boss, but I'd ridden on his coattails and learned a lot from him. And the opportunity came up to go to Asia for a week and basically go to Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and spend literally 1-2 nights in each one, and then fly back and go and see our offices, go and meet the local people, go and see some of their bank clients, and sort of talk to them about some of the stuff that we'd been doing in London. And so I did that, and I can remember it was the first time I'd ever been to Asia, and I flew direct to Tokyo, and it was January, it was the middle of winter, and it was thick snow, and it was bitterly cold, and it was just this unbelievable culture shock. I still remember that feeling of, just utter sort of discombobulation of, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. There's nothing in English.
Was there a few of you that went, or was it
no,
just
it was
you?
just me.
Just you?
It was just me. And I was, what was I? 29 or something.
I'm guessing your wife didn't come with you then.
No, literally it was by myself. And I can remember doing a couple of nights in Tokyo. I think I landed on a Saturday or a Sunday probably. And then I had to go into the office on the Monday, jet lagged and hotel.
That's tough, isn't it?
I was not very adventurous in my food, and I'm still not really, but I'm much better than I was. So that was tough. Then Korea, that was frankly even stranger. I love Korea and Korean food. I love Japan too. I've been back many times since. But for me at that time, having had a very London-centric existence, it was such a strange place. And then I flew to Hong Kong, and that just changed everything, because Hong Kong was, have you ever been to Hong Kong?
No.
A far more gentle introduction to Asia. And I'm a huge rugby fan. I played a lot of rugby in Hong Kong as well as here. And the Six Nations happened to be on that Saturday night. And I can remember watching, one of the games, England-Wales it was, in a bar, and it was an amazing experience. And I thought, okay, now I get it. Now I see why people want to be in Asia. And from that day, I thought, I need to engineer a move here. How hard can that be? I mean, quite hard as it turned out.
So I'm guessing at this point, it's not like the Japan and Singapore that's there now.
Sorry, do you mean Hong Kong? Or
yeah,
Japan?
No. So when you said you could have that big culture shock in Japan, was it culture shock because it was like dated? Was it culture shock because it was, it was going back in time, or was it way more advanced than you thought it was going to be?
It was completely unfamiliar. I felt utterly out of place. I didn't know kind of how to. For example, in Hong Kong, if you just rocked up in Hong Kong and found yourself in one of the hotels, you could walk out of a hotel. Everybody would be speaking English. You could navigate your way around. You could get in a taxi and tell your taxi driver where to go, or can you suggest an area to go for dinner, or a bar or something. And that's all impossible. That it was. I think it's changed a lot in Japan and Korea. In Korea, they used to have little flip phones. This is pre-iPhones. When you got in a taxi in Korea, they used to have a little flip phone on the door and back, where you would talk to an interpreter who would then talk to the driver.
Oh, gosh.
So you couldn't communicate directly with the drivers. So it was this almost like a sci-fi movie.
Google Translate version 1, that was.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I was always terrified of the food and what I was eating, because you can't read the menu. So you always had to be reliant on people in your office, colleagues, hopefully friends that knew what I would and wouldn't be comfortable eating.
You could get stitched up so easily there.
You could, and I did. And there were certain dinners. I mean, I almost shouldn't say this, but I can remember
whatever it is now. You definitely have to.
I know. So certain dinners in Hong Kong particularly these big kind of banquet, multi-course dinners to celebrate big things or a business function or something. A lot of it was seafood and fish and shark fin soup and all this stuff, which I just couldn't eat. And
so when the meat course came out, you were less picky as to what was in it?
Except sometimes it was whole pigeons and, like bits of chicken, but they sort of just cut it into quarters. So it's very different. You just have to get used to the way that it looks and how to approach it. But sometimes
none of it barked or meowed, right?
No.
As far as you know.
Maybe, yeah, theoretically. I mean, the chicken had lots of different looks to it, right?
Yes.
The chicken they kept advising you to get. Yeah.
I mean, there are some very interesting sort of markets and things there that that become kind of tourist destinations because to see various parts of animals that you're not used to seeing. It wasn't very nice, and I was a bit squeamish about it. So
And you said you're quite a, but not fussy eater, but you like what you like. You weren't really adventurous.
I mean, this is 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So over the years, I have become slightly more adapted. I mean, look, my wife's Asian and she's a brilliant cook. So
yeah. So you have. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm sure she can go along and like introduce an awful lot of dishes.
Yeah.
She does. I mean, she's brilliant, and so, but it was hard. But Hong Kong was the hub for finance in Asia. I mean, Singapore has rapidly caught up, if not overtaken it, but certainly 20 years ago, Hong Kong was where everybody had their Asia headquarters. And it was a very easy sell to my first wife. I've got an opportunity to come out here. They're offering to fly you out next week for 4 days to do a look-see, they call it, just to sort of check that she was okay.
Yeah, she was okay.
I mean, I think our kids were. Well, we eventually left. It all happened very quickly within about 6 months. My boss in London didn't speak to me for 6 months because he took it as a personal insult.
Oh, what, because you were leaving I
was leaving.
Yeah.
We sat next to each other, and for 6 months, he didn't say a word to me.
It's not awkward at all, is it?
I know.
Oh, bless.
So when we finally left, we left on my 31st birthday in 2003. I'm 54, in case you're doing the maths. And we had Emma would have been about 3. And is that right? Yeah, 3. And William would have been 1 year old. So, and we all flew out there.
Gosh, that's a big move of 2
I know,
months.
it was huge. It was huge. And it had all happened quite quickly as well. And, we had this house and we sort of rented it out, but for me, it was a new lease of life. It was a new start in Canary Wharf. And by this point, we were living in Surrey. And I had to commute to Canary Wharf. I was on, 5:48 train every day, scraping the ice off the car at 5:30 in the morning. It was grim. And truly, one of the reasons that just ground me down was that commute, just commuting every day and these long, either train journeys or often car journeys if I was late in the office, coming in at weekends a lot, missing family holidays, as I said, or cancelling them. And it just ground me down. And so when Hong Kong came up, I just absolutely jumped at it, far more laid back, living 5-minute taxi ride from the office, starting at 9. Nobody's really working past 6 o'clock. Bars, restaurants, everything's on your doorstep. The weather's amazing.
Tick, tick.
Everything was being paid for by Barclays. I was on this really generous expat package for a couple of years, and it just made complete sense. Except my wife hated it.
Oh.
So that didn't really work out. She absolutely hated it. And I was traveling an awful lot. Hong Kong was the hub, but every week I was going to Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, India a lot, Philippines, Australia. So I was kind of enjoying my work and I was enjoying life in Hong Kong, but I completely neglected the family, if I'm honest.
And it must have been quite isolating for,
Looking back, yes, it must have been. It clearly was.
Yeah.
She hated it. And, one of the biggest, I suppose, sort of low points, one of the lowest points in my life, sort of when that all fell apart, which was about 2.5 years later. And by that point, the kids were sort of 5 and 3. And it was clear that she was going to leave Hong Kong. and I had to make the decision, whether or not to stay there.
Yeah.
And that was just such a difficult, traumatic time. I mean, I literally fell off the rails. I had to take a couple of weeks off work because of it. Because I just fell to pieces because I didn't know what to do. I loved the job. We were doing really well. I was starting to make decent money. That was the whole reason.
That was the way you wanted to start in the first place. Yeah.
This is taking him back to like 15, 16 and going,
I'm
time to do a vet, I'm going after the money.
Yeah.
But I realized if I went back, that my options would be very limited, and I'd probably go and have to go and work in the same role for the same person.
With the guy,
the one who doesn't talk to you.
that had completely blanked me for 6 months. So that wasn't really an option. And in the end,
I'm guessing your wife was, or your then wife, was pretty strong-willed in terms of, I can't put up with this anymore.
She was adamant. She was adamant that she went back. I mean, it was...
I mean, I'm suppose as well as, if you've got thrown yourself into the job and the lifestyle and everything else like that, and she's not kind of quite acclimating to it.
Yes,
you're almost on two different journeys at that point.
I think so. I mean, looking back on it, I think that's right. I mean, don't get me wrong. We lived on the face of it, very glamorous expat lifestyle with the clubs and, the country clubs and everything. Very superficially, it was wonderful.
On paper,
it looked amazing.
Yeah.
But actually it wasn't very healthy, and I was traveling all the time, and the stress was enormous, and the pressure to perform and deliver the deals and doing these big presentations and flying around all over.
You don't realize when you're in it, do you? But yeah,
looking back on it, I realized what an unhealthy environment that industry is and was, and how superficial it is. But nevertheless, I mean, it's easy to be sort of high and mighty about it all now. But nevertheless, I think it gave me a lot of skills. It gave me a very, very good training in finance. It gave me a very good training in sort of structuring things and diligence and being persistent, and that this thing of grit, right? What defines entrepreneurs, and the ability to keep going and just be persistent and not take no for an answer, or not worry about getting knocked down, until you finally get something done. It taught me all that, but it also taught me that money actually doesn't really mean anything. I mean, that was a big revelation to me, because, for years, right, since age 15.
Which is crazy. From age of school, you wanted...
That was my only focus. Yeah. And by that point, and this is the crazy thing, my wife left at the end of 2005, December 2005. And 2006 was my best year ever to this day, financially. And then in 2007, the market started to collapse. And in 2008, totally fell off the cliff.
Yeah.
So 2006, I'd made more money than I'd ever dreamed of and will ever earn again. I'm absolutely certain. And similarly in 2007, because we had half a very good year, but I was absolutely miserable. My wife had left, my kids had left. I'd sort of slightly gone off the rails a bit, not really being quite sure what to do with myself. I was not exactly the best version of myself, shall we say. And I realized that, why am I doing this? What is the point of this?
I think it makes you realize when people say you chase money, but what's your end goal? What are you going to do with all that once you've got it?
I think the concept is always that the people don't realize until they achieve whatever it is that they're doing, that they don't realize that the exciting bit is the chase, not the actual getting it.
I think that's right.
when you climb a mountain, you climb a mountain and then you go through all that journey to get there, and then you get to the top, put a flag in, and go, so what's next? Because once you've climbed the tallest mountain in the world, or you've done whatever, it's like, I guess I've just got to come back down again. Then that's right.
And I was just miserable. I mean, I don't know if I had what you call a breakdown, but I certainly had to take time off work. And
can I ask you a tough question?
Please.
Okay. it might be tough. In hindsight, would you say your wife was right, or your then wife was right, to turn around and go back at the time she did? I mean, is there resentment that she didn't stay and support you?
There was at the time. There definitely was at the time. But no, in hindsight, it was the right thing. Yeah. We had got married very young. We'd met at university. Yeah. I was desperate to, I was desperate to do things that in my 15, 16-year-old mind that successful people did.
Yeah, tick the boxes.
And like you said, it happened quickly from the time you decided to go to Hong Kong. You said, 6 months to turn around to get there?
Yeah, it's quite like that.
It's quite quick, isn't it?
It was very quick.
Yeah.
That's right. So, no, in hindsight, I think it was for the best. But, there has been no worse feeling in my life, I can hand on heart say, than seeing my kids off in a taxi when they left the apartment in Hong Kong that night. And I opened a bottle of wine, went out and sat on my balcony and drank it.
Yeah.
And pretty much carried on drinking for a few months after that.
Yeah.
It was really tough.
But it must be nice now seeing Emma.
Yeah.
Seeing what she's achieved and going, the path that she ended up taking, or that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm very close to my
took.
kids. Emma and William, who's 2 years younger, he actually lives in Dis.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been there for the last few years. So, and in fact, I'm now grandfather because he recently had a son. So
congratulations.
Thank you. But it doesn't replace all the years that we didn't see each other, right? And at most, my mum would always bring them out once a year, and I would either see them, and I'd usually come back once a year, so I'd probably see them twice a year. And Skype was just coming in at the time, so but for a while they were too young to use it.
Yeah,
you'd imagine, doing WhatsApp calls with young kids.
They're
really
not interested, are they? Yeah.
So there were big gaps there. There's no question about it. And that's why now I think with a completely different perspective on life and money and success and what it's all about, I'm trying to do it completely differently. It's why my office is, an 8-minute walk from my house. It's why I go to watch all of the sports things that I can with kids and all the music things, because I never did it. Emma, particularly in music, she was grade 8 this, grade 8 that, national level swimmer. I never saw any of it, not once.
Yeah.
And that's a big regret.
So did you meet your now wife while you're out there?
Yes, I did. So we met in Manila in 2006. So again, I was still traveling a lot. So we met in 2006, and she had also, she had 2 children of her own, very similar ages to Emma and Will. I mean, they're all within, it's scary. The 2 girls are within 2 weeks of each other, and the 2 boys are a few months apart. And so it took a few months, I think, for us to to both kind of realize, okay, this might be this might develop. So eventually she moved to Hong Kong. And by that point, I'd sort of sorted myself out a bit. And we sort of settled down in Hong Kong and got a dog, and and eventually after 5 years or so, we got engaged, got married in 2012, April. What's the date today? No, we're okay.
No, you're okay.
Yeah, you haven't hit that one.
We've got a couple of weeks. And then our son Oliver was born, a year or so later. And bearing in mind, I was still with Barclays at the time, but when we met, but by that point, I knew it was I was treading water. I was just sort of figuring out what's next. I was happy to take the money and ride the markets as long as I could. But eventually, then the divorce is always horrible. Mm-hmm. It was, so that took a couple of years to sort of sort out. And then the markets had fallen apart, and I just thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. There's literally no point me doing this. I'm killing myself in a job I just don't like anymore.
You've thrown everything at it.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that point as well, 2006, 2007, where you go, I need all this money to be happy, because that's obviously what I'm going for. You get all the money, and then you realize that actually you had happiness with, your first kids and your first wife. Then she's gone, and it's like, okay, well, job and career and the career path is not the route to happy.
Absolutely right. And the other thing, I mean, a huge regret in my life was I wasn't very sensible with money. I just saw it as an endless tap that would keep running so long as I was still able to do the job. And it wasn't. And the markets do change, and your ability to do the job or your desire to do the job changes. So, I did stupid things. I bought property in Florida. I bought apartments in Spain. I never visited, never once went to, because I bought them just before we went to Hong Kong, not knowing we were going to Hong Kong, and then got divorced, and so lost them all anyway. But and I sort of
first wife though loves her holidays now.
Well,
she loves Florida.
I think she sold the last one. But anyway, that's another story. But then and I listened to your episode with Halstead, who I know very well, Halstead Otley, huge property investor, lovely guy, and I sort of think, instead of doing that, instead of buying that and that and that, I should have just bought 5 buy-to-let properties in Ipswich 25 years ago, right? And I can't.
Hindsight's a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but it also didn't fit the banking lifestyle.
No, it didn't.
It's way easier to say I've got an apartment in Florida than I've got
it sounds
five 3-up, like 3-bed semis in.
I was lucky. I mean, it was horrendous. But no, it's a very good point, because by that point I was absolutely convinced I was never coming back to Ipswich. I had this amazing lifestyle in Hong Kong. Why on earth would I ever come back to Ipswich? It was inconceivable to me that I would come back to the UK. And by that point, I was absolutely committed to spending the rest of my life in Asia. And again, things change, of course, circumstances change and your motivations change. But that was me in the mid-2000s.
Okay, so what was the reason? I need to hear that. Like, there's no way I'm definitely coming back to Ipswich. No way at all.
No way.
And we're talking to you with your office in Ipswich. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so hold on. We need to go via the Philippines first.
Oh.
So in the end, so I left banking. Got my divorce sorted out. We got remarried. By that point, I got involved. The British Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong had an angel investment program, a little bit like Dragon's Den, but not quite as brutal. And it was kind of a mentoring thing that we used to help startup businesses raise money, and we could sort of get involved in them. And I got involved in some of that. That was really interesting, because it suddenly broadened my horizons from this very narrow banking role that I had done that nobody was interested in. You couldn't, really explain to anyone in an interesting way what you did for a living. How exactly did you buy this house? It was really hard to explain it. So I really enjoyed that, just being able to, understand startup businesses and writing a pitch and, discounted cash flow models and how you value things. And so that really opened my eyes, and I found really interesting, and also started doing some property investment and development a little bit in Asia, particularly in the Philippines. Land is cheap there, objectively, compared to here, and certainly compared to Hong Kong. And so my wife, Eileen, we'd bought some land in the Philippines, and we sort of started thinking, okay, well, what can we do with it? What can we do with this land that we bought so cheaply? And in the end, sort of 2015, we started. We'd been married a few years. We were living in this very small apartment in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is vertical living. It's shoebox apartments, phenomenally expensive cost of living there and cost of housing. And we'd started to get kind of a bit bored of it. Hong Kong's amazing, but it's very small. And that can become quite claustrophobic for a lot of people.
And you'd left Barclays at this point?
Yeah, I'd left Barclays in 2009.
Okay.
Basically, when I was kind of hoping that they might make me redundant and pay me out. But because I'd been there so long, there was a lot of us in this same boat. We sort of realized it would be too expensive. All they would do, we thought, was just not pay us, right? Not give us our bonus. A large part of our income, our total compensation, was a discretionary bonus, which could easily be zero. It could easily be £1 million. It could easily be zero.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not easily, but it arguably could be. And so the calculus was, well, the markets were terrible. We're expensive anyway. And so they would probably just not pay us, and the decision would be made for you. So I just got out and went off to do something else, a bit entrepreneurial with a finance company that I invested in. But meanwhile, I think we'd just had enough of Hong Kong, and so we in the end, we made the decision in 2016, let's go to Hong Kong. Let's go to the Philippines. Let's just chill out for a bit, sort of decompress. It really felt like that, needing to decompress. We had enough money to sort of live on for a while without really worrying too much about it. We built our house and we spent a lot of time and frankly, a lot of money building this house that we had always planned to live in forever, right? That was our forever home without any thoughts of coming back. And to this day, most of my worldly possessions are there, all my books, an awful lot of my clothes are still there. Because when we eventually left and came here, all we had was one suitcase each.
Oh.
So when we go back, we still have the house. We still have dogs there. We still have housekeepers there, and we spend every summer there for 2 months, which is lovely.
That's lovely,
and it's amazing for the kids. And there's loads of beaches, and amazing for Eileen. Bearing in mind that she had 2019 when we eventually decided to come back. She uprooted her life,
her whole life,
very close to her family, 2 sisters and brother. All live within sort of 50 meters of our house or 100 meters. So it's a very big, these are big Catholic families, lots of kids, families, everything. So it's amazing for them to be able to go back. And I love it too, but it was really hard living there. I found it quite hard living there for 3 years, 3.5 years. Once we'd sort of built a few properties and rented them out and sort of run out of money. The big difference between property there and here is here we do have a very active secondary market. So you can buy and sell stuff fairly easily.
Yeah.
If you have to sell a property in a hurry, you can stick it into an auction. Pretty much guarantee you'll sell it at some price. Philippines is completely different. It's a very, very, in many ways, primitive financial sort of infrastructure. Credit is very hard to come by. The percentage of the population that have bank accounts is very low. Credit cards even lower. Oh. So it's a very traditional economy in that sense. And so once you build properties, you kind of just have to run it as a portfolio. And so that's what we did, and that's what we still have. It's nothing major by UK standards, but it generates enough income to sort of support all our expenses and whatever we need there. So that's nice.
And then what made you move back here? You had your properties in Philippines.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, so, glamorous lifestyle in Hong Kong, living 3 years in the tropics. Where else would I want to live?
Why would you not want to come back to Ipswich?
Boom, Ipswich.
That just seems like the right way to go, right?
I know. I mean, people do ask me that all the time. It was really...
And I was trying to say it in a really nice way as well.
No,
but
I know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's ridiculous. But the reason we did it was for school.
Okay.
It was only for that. So Oliver, our 12-year-old, he was born in Hong Kong, went to his very first school in Hong Kong, then went to a couple of schools in the Philippines, in Davao City. It's down in the south. A very, very beautiful part of the country. But he was really struggling at school. He never did speak the local languages. They're sort of the national language and then the local dialect. And obviously I couldn't have a lot of influence in that. But for whatever reason, he grew up speaking English only. And that put him at a disadvantage, and he hated going to school, and it was really difficult. And and again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I could see him simply not having the opportunities and not having those doors that he can open later in life. And again, it happened quite quickly, but we had a conversation about it. We were planning to have another baby.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Eileen was already pregnant with Edward, our second. And we made quite a quick decision. Okay, let's just speak to Ipswich School. Let's just see what they say.
Yeah.
What's the process? How do we get him in? What's the visa requirements? I mean, getting a visa was really challenging. But we did it, and we came back in November 2019. And Eileen was out here, and that was about the last time she was able to fly.
Her.
I think she had about another 2 or 3 weeks of a window where she was still able to fly.
Yeah.
The visa came through, and we had 3 weeks to literally pack our cases and get ready for the move. So again, it was a real shock. We look back on it even now and sort of think, wow, that really was unexpected, because we hadn't, as I say, when we'd gone there, we had planned to live there, retire there, and so coming back, November 2019, huge shock for Eileen. She'd never really never lived here, although she'd been here many times with me over the years. And we got Oliver into school. And then, of course, Edward was born in January 2020, at the end of January. And then COVID hit, a few weeks later. And that's really how the business came about. Because I'm sitting here at my mum's house. We were all living at my mum's house because the grandmother's house was rented. So we ended up stuck in my mum's house 7 months, as it turned out, because of COVID, till we could move in. But it was during that homeschooling phase, sitting at home thinking, right, well, what am I going to do with myself now that I'm back? And I'd gone to London before COVID and met a couple of recruiters, and I went around the city and went, I thought, are there any jobs in banking? Should I be even thinking about going back into it? I know. And I remember coming out of Liverpool Street Station, and I saw this guy with a kind of a chalk striped city suit with very short trousers and no socks. And I thought,
this has changed.
This place,
this is not how I remember it.
Yeah, this is definitely, and I'm nearly 50. Remember, I left the UK on my 31st birthday, and I came back, 47, whatever I was, nearly 48.
Yeah, there we go. You thought it was a big culture shock when you went to Japan.
I know.
When you see someone with short trousers and no socks and shoes, it's
that's a long time to be away.
Boy, this place has changed.
That's a long time to be away.
And also, I can remember clearly. I went 2 days running, 2 consecutive days, and on the second day, there was a flood at Liverpool Street Station, and I was on a 5-something train back, and I didn't get back to my mum's house till about 10:30 at night.
Oh,
and I thought, this is exactly why
it gave you the flashbacks to the commute.
This is
made my mind up now. Yeah.
So I then said, right, whatever I do, I'm not commuting.
I'm not commuting.
I've got to be near home. I've got to be near the kids. And just slowly but surely, again, I'd been away for nearly 20 years. I didn't really know the landscape. Everything had changed. New regulator, all these lenders that I'd never heard of. And it took me a good 2 years just to kind of figure it out very slowly but surely. Nick, I think we spoke probably in those early days when I was trying to get my head around the VAT treatment on fees and things. And it was completely new. I hadn't lived in Ipswich before, even though I knew Ipswich quite well from school. I hadn't ever lived there. I didn't really know anyone in Ipswich. And of course it was COVID, so it was so hard to go out and do anything. And that's how I ended up in Saracen's House.
You don't do things by halves, do you? You make these decisions.
I know. And so I got myself the office in Saracen's House, which during COVID was actually half empty. So it wasn't that hard at the time to get a space there, and just slowly but surely figured it all out. And it took a long time, but I've found it so rewarding. I can't tell you. It's, I'm financially, it's nowhere near where I was 20 years ago. But from a personal fulfillment in truly creating something and enjoying what you're doing. And I always thought this was a bit of a myth. I always looked at other people that say, if you enjoy what you're doing, and that's most of the battle. And look, none of us enjoy every day. None of us enjoy every single thing that happens in our day-to-day lives, in our businesses. But it's the first time, even in those heady banking days where we'd pull in, a multi-million-pound deal that we knew we were all going to get well paid from. I don't think I ever had the sense of fulfillment that I do now, because it's not your creation, right? This is your thing, and people.
Yeah, you're acting on behalf of someone else, and you're sitting there with your bowl out waiting to see what they put in it.
If I won a piece of business in my banking days, it was because people wanted to use Barclays Bank, not Richard.
I figured that. Yeah. I remember doing it with Sage. I worked for Sage for a little while, and I remember going to sign up Scrutt and Bland. And I signed Scrutt and Bland when they had their Ipswich and Colchester office. And I wasn't even supposed to be doing sales. I was a field support person. And I signed them up to one of our bits of software, and it was a big deal, 5-6 figures in terms of like software and support and training and whatever. And I remember doing it, and they went like, just put it in, just forward it over to so-and-so. It's like, hang on a second, this is a serious thing. And I've done this. It's like, no one cares. It's a PLC. We honestly couldn't care less.
Exactly.
Well done. Just let the so-and-so know. Or it was more like oh, it's a bit of a pain because I shouldn't be emailing something in because I had to send it to the local sales guy first so he could send in the order because processes and I was like, yeah, I'm never, ever, ever going to do that again.
Yeah, no, I agree. And now, having a finance business, I mean, I'm helping property investors and property developers raise money. People want my advice.
And they're coming to you for Richard, not for Barclays, not for
exactly
you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that means a lot. I mean, it genuinely means a lot. And I think, one of the main, I suppose one of the things that I'm most proud of is that people will keep using me. People will come back and they will recommend me and they will refer me. And that means a huge amount because it's very self-validating, but it also shows that all that work has kind of paid off.
Yeah.
And I said earlier that the banking background gave me a lot of skills. There's no way I could have figured this industry out, the broking industry in 2020 and 21. I hadn't had that training.
Yeah.
I hadn't been able to navigate the FCA regulations and what does this mean and how do I get this authorization? It wouldn't have given me those basic building blocks of how to do it. So, that's what I'm doing. That's what I've been doing for the last few years. I'm really enjoying doing it, going around to property events and seeing John Howard speaking last night and meeting a lot of those people. Despite all the market volatility and craziness, the property world will still continue. There will still be people that want to try and make money out of property, doing a million different ways, and they will need money to do it. And hopefully I'll always be able to help them.
Okay, I've got two quick fire questions for you.
Oh.
Number one, if you could have your time again, would you go back into banking?
No.
Okay, that's all right. That's good.
I wouldn't. And look, 15, if I was 15 today, banking wouldn't have the cachet that it did in the 80s, right? It would be AI, it would be Google, it would be tech companies, it would be Silicon Valley. That's what attracts the economists at Cambridge University who are similar to me wouldn't be chasing those banking jobs.
And now second question. If there is imagine you at 15 and they want to come into the career that you're doing right now, what would you suggest they work on and what would you suggest they focus on?
I think getting experience, I mean, there's two things. I'm doing property and I'm doing finance. So understanding one of those or both of those would be brilliant. Getting work experience in an estate agent's or work experience at a mortgage broker or doing any sort of finance, accounting. I mean, just basic numeracy. I'm actually trying to hire somebody at the moment to sort of come under me and basically have me train sort of another broker or two. And having an understanding of how the property market works and how people are, how do you make money out of property, right? It's very easy to say you buy one price and you sell high, but how do you do that? And there are dozens of different strategies that people are using to do that. Get to know people. It's all about relationships. I've been doing interviews for this new hire, and I keep saying it. It is a people business. For all the worry about AI, I am not scared about AI just yet because I know how much of a human element there is in what I do. And it's only because people hopefully trust me to give them good advice and to deliver what I hopefully what they want and what I say I'll deliver, that they'll keep doing it. It's all about personal connections.
That's amazing. Richard Grainger, thank you very much.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.